Well done. Thanks for coming out this morning. We do have the honor of having one Harold Faltermeyer next to us, and today we're going to talk about all things big, that is Bavaria, Hollywood, and pop music. So please give him a hand.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
And seeing that it's been quite a hard week already, we figure we listen to some music just to ease us in. So what role has that song in your life?
Yeah, you might want to ask what does Harold Faltermeyer has to do with the Beatles and with Michelle. This was one of the songs I adored so much because I couldn't figure out the chords in the first place. This was for a rock band or for a pop band at that time a very unique thing to do a song which is like an Irving Berlin or a very complicated chord structure, you know.
What's complicated about it?
Well, the chords. I mean, it's not just C, F, and G or E, A, and B natural. It's a rather complex arrangement of vocals and everything. And I had a little band back then, and we tried to play the song, and it took us quite some time to figure out how it worked.
How old were you at the time?
13.
And you were in Bavaria then, I take it.
Yes.
I mean, Harold is not exactly the most Bavarian spelling, right?
Well, but it's how I'm called. I have a godfather who was an American soldier, and my parents met him when America finally took over in Germany. And this was one of the rare friendships back then, and they didn't have kids, and they said, whenever you have kids, I would love to be the godfather. And this guy's name was Harold H. Clark, and that's why my name is Harold.
Yeah, and I mean, Munich was in a not in the Bavarian sector, in the American sector.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So, do you have any recollection of that godfather?
Oh yeah, he always pretended to be an Indian, a native Indian, but he was not. He was an American, typically Southern guy. And he was a great guy. I remember him being very gentle and very friendly to our family. And actually, as a matter of fact, his family supported our family really very good throughout the early years after Germany had to be built up again because everything was destroyed, you know, and they helped us really.
So, I mean, without making it sound too gloomy, but how did you get access to instruments and all?
My family was always known for doing music at home. This was a thing which was called house music back then. That does not have to do anything with the house music of today, but it was music you played on a Sunday morning. You had like friends over, and you played like Schumann, Bach, and Beethoven, or Mozart. And my grandpa was a very good violin player, while my dad was a very good piano player. And my grandmom was a good singer, so they sang like Schumann songs and Beethoven sonaten and everything, you know. So that's how I got access to music. And I said, as a little kid, I said I want to study, I want to learn piano, you know. And which in the first place was a very interesting decision because I didn't figure out, first of all, that I had to study a lot, you know. So I thought this comes by nothing, you know. You just sit on the piano and you just play, you know. But you had to study, and I had a teacher from Romania, and she was I should say a bitch, because
It's not a very nice thing to say.
well, but it was terrible because she had like a nail file, you know, and I played, and she was always sitting there and doing her nails, and whenever I played a wrong note, she hit me on the fingers, you know. So I didn't like her.
It is kind of interesting because I was actually going to ask you when you get brought up in the German schooling system and it gets to classical music, there's all these horror stories about Schumann, Schubert, or whatever, and what their teachers did to them, like the one that would tie the fingers up to the grand piano.
Yeah, terrible, isn't it? Huh? I guess Schumann even lost his ligaments because of a thing like this. Yeah, terrible.
Do you think it's worth it, all that torture?
Well, you know, being a performer, I mean, you have to go through lots of hours of study. Otherwise, you don't make it because the competition is just too big. I recall later in the music college, I tried to study piano on a first choice instrument, and I couldn't even get accepted at all because I was not good at all because we had so many great players. Funny enough, from Japan at that time, they had like a student exchange program, and the Japanese are known and were known for intensive rehearsal. So they were sitting there at the rehearsal rooms day and night, practicing like 10 hours, 12 hours, all this complicated Czerny etudes and all the things, you know. So they were so much better than the kids from Munich were, you know. So of course what we call Messlatte, I don't know the English word for that. It's like the level
threshold or the mark.
Threshold, you know, the mark was so high that only the best of the best could get in.
Well, I mean, what do you expect? Because at the same time, you were just busy hanging out at TV studios.
That's right.
Eine der jüngsten Beatgruppen Deutschlands vorstellen, Melodic Sound aus München.
That's what you would call today the big casting shows in the States or so, you know, like America's Talent or whatever, you know. This was a show in Germany, which is like one of the ancient shows who was similar to that.
Was that even German TV or was it Bavarian TV?
No, German TV. It was German TV. It was the Badische Rundfunk, you know, by Dieter Breutel. This guy is one of the most famous TV directors in Germany, or was. He still lives, actually. He's now 88 years old.
Und jetzt darf ich Ihnen eine der jüngsten Beatgruppen Deutschlands vorstellen, Melodic Sound aus München. Diese 4 jungen Burschen schreiben ihre Titel selbst, die meisten ihrer Titel auf jeden Fall. Und der Titel, den Sie hier
They write their own material, at least most of it.
Das Werk, Text und Musik von Melodic Sound. Joy und Hitzkids haben mir gestern Abend gesagt, dass die Jungs schon ganz dufte swingen und ich glaube, das ist ein ganz großes Kompliment.
Intranslatable 50s youth speak. Grown-up person trying to speak that.
Melodic Sound aus München.
That's my brother. And that's me.
We talked about things we knew, but 2 days ago when I called you up, nobody was out for me. There's something wrong with you. They don't have something else to do. Their life has gone away. They don't love me anymore today, yeah. I've never saw that dummy boy, and you always my girl. And the hope is saying that saying about me, and now they go not so well. I call you up to Charles every day, we talk about things with you. But 2 days ago when I called you up, nobody was out for me.
Melodic Sound aus München. Die Dufte swingen.
It's early days, yeah.
Yes, dufte swingen is probably translatable as smelly swinging, whatever that's supposed to be.
This was an expression back then. We always said es swingt schon richtig dufte. That's a very German expression for quite funky.
But I mean, not even smelling in a bad sense.
No,
it's an extremely tame way of voicing your adult discontent. Yeah. I guess pop music at that time was probably very parent-friendly, right? I mean, this is not exactly the last Slayer album.
No. I mean, pop music, especially for a lot of people back then, was associated with long hair, with smelly shoes, and just being ridiculous and not being decent, And I remember that my parents even said, your hair can't only be this long, and you have to dress decent. And it was not well received, and especially, in our family, it was. This was a family of classical music, and I was treated first of all like an outlaw because I was playing an organ or I was playing not classical stuff,
An organ that was also called the Schweineorgel, the pig
organ. The pig organ, right? Definitely, yeah. And of course, you had the pedal, where you could make it as loud as you want. So you had a big advantage against everybody else, if you played together with a piano player, he had his own volume, But with the organ, you just hit the throttle and you go, So it's pretty terrible.
Some more music from those formative years. So apart from the fact that the intro would make for a pretty dope sample, what else was going on here?
This was a song I recall as a very emotional moment when I was growing up and being a teenager. This was a song, if you believe it or not. We played this in parties we had in the evening, And this was the best dancing song when you were eyeballing a girl and you tried to get her on a dance floor. So you danced with her, and I had a girlfriend in Spain at that time, And I remember dancing to this song all night long and holding her really, really tight and trying to seduce her.
So they would have rewinds on the song and play it over and over?
No, at the time you just had to go back to the turntable and just put the needle on start.
Oh, it was that kind of house party.
Oh, yeah.
I see. Who was the DJ at the time?
Well, you had to be your own DJ. There were no DJs.
And but you were still in school, right?
Yeah.
And what happened when you finished school?
That's a really sad story. I was a school dropout. I never finished school. I was just too focused on music at that time already, and my grades were really, really bad. So what could I do? I mean, it was like the end of everything. First of all, the family said, "Oh, you're going to be a garbage boy. You're going to be doing something. Or open a restaurant or open a bar or whatever. But it's not what the family expected. Because the family was rather educated, lots of professors and educated people, and then everybody said it's going to be the end of the family because they thought I'm something in our family, which is a big family, something like the heir of the throne, So, but no way, I was a school dropout, but I had one gift. I had a musical talent, and my dad found out that he had to support that. So he did.
In which sort of way did he manage to do that?
He went to Munich to the college, and he went to the principal of the college, Professor Augustin, I remember, and he said, "You have to listen to my son. He's extraordinarily gifted in music, and he has to study music." And everybody back then said it's impossible. He has to make his Abitur. He had to graduate. So he said, "I don't care. He has like this talent. I want him in this university." And he was really, really pushy at that time. And so he managed to convince the principal to give me a chance and to let me introduce myself. So I did. And back then I had something which was almost perfect pitch. I still have that in that way, but I don't have the real perfect pitch. But related to a piano, I could definitely state and name and spot every note, and so they got interested all of a sudden. And there was another guy who had the same gift, who was a similar character than I was. So, believe it or not, we both got accepted. And so I was accepted to study music, of course, with the limitation of never teaching music and not, of course, getting a degree in music, But I studied 8 semesters at Munich Music College.
And where did the studio work come in?
What's that?
Where did the studio work come in?
Well, that's another thing. So I dropped out at school in around Easter, and the semester start was in October. And at that time, my family had a relationship with Deutsche Grammophongesellschaft,
which is a renowned label.
Very, very famous record label, especially in the classical field. And they had a studio in Munich. And we had this relationship because they were tenants in a building we own in Munich, and they had the Bavarian distribution, the southern German distribution for the records. At that time, they had to store like thousands and thousands of records, vinyl records, and so they rented the space. We knew all the guys, of course, and my dad said, "I want you to go to the studio and to take some kind of apprentice in the studio, so you're not hanging around all summer long until the semester starts." And they got me this job as a little kid in a studio, just getting drinks for everybody and washing cables and setting up microphones and taking care of the studio. So I did, and as a matter of fact, the first job I ever had in a recording studio was getting a gin tonic to Mr. Max Greger, who used to be one of the famous band leaders back then in Germany. So that was my first job in a studio.
Did all band leaders drink gin and tonic?
Well, some of them drank whiskey, like Bert Kaempfert. He drank a bottle a day. You mean easy, Actually, he died on the cirrhosis. On the cirrhosis, yeah. So, but I found out really, really, really quick that technique and the technical field of music is something which interests me a lot. And when the production was gone, like they had like a 9-to-5 situation back at Deutsche Grammophongesellschaft, then I went back in there, and I was like the phantom of the studio. I tried to find out what this amplifier was for, what this limiter was for. they had all this ancient stuff back then, like Fairchild compressors, things you would pay a fortune these days. You know, they had this in the studio, like tons of them. I remember we had like 20 Fairchild compressors. You know, one is worth now like 15 grand or 20 grand. You know, back then we couldn't even use them because the bulbs were always broken. You know, so.
What sort of stuff was actually being recorded there? Because obviously now you would remember Deutsche Grammophon from all their massive classical back catalog, as well as their Neue Musik stuff. And I mean, there's like even Stockhausen white labels out there and that kind of stuff. But they apparently did a lot of other things as well at the time.
Right. This Munich studio was called the Faltydorf studio. And they occasionally did classical music as well. I actually worked with Stockhausen. I was a little tech then, a little later, and he was there recording some stuff. But mainly, this was used for Schlager productions in Germany.
What is Schlager to the not German mind?
Schlager is, I mean, it's a German thing. It's not. It's in America. Some people start to say music to it, which is not right. It's like popular. It's Schlager. You have to see is the German word for popular music. A Schlager is like something which is a hit. Schlager actually is a hit. Schlagen means to hit. You know. So Schlager is popular music, and is strictly bound to German, very profound lyrics. Actually, you know, very. I love you, girl, and blah 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 things. You know, it's very very shallow. Things, but it has its audience, and it sells millions of records. Still does, you know. I mean, we have a star right now, which is Helene Fischer, who is considered to be a Schlager singer, but she's actually trained as a musical singer. She's a great singer, but she sings songs which I personally don't understand. Like the Schlager music, I never really understood. I had to record some stuff in the early days. But I was never really great at it because my favorite music was black music, was the American pop music, was West Coast music, and I always tried to get some elements of this music back to my productions, which was not really appreciated.
Which is a bizarre thing when you listen to Schlager throughout the ages, and obviously you're kind of forced to it when you are in a public situation in this country. And that at the time, the string arrangements probably, while now there's a lot of drum machines in there, and there's all these weird little offshoots of it where you figure like, oh, someone was actually in the studio who really wanted to do his thing, but they just had to answer to whatever the production was demanding for it.
Yeah, definitely. There was actually a singer who was really famous back then. His name was Roy Black. This was his artist's name. His real name was Gerd Höllerich, which you cannot have on your record, you know. So this guy was Roy Black, and he had huge hits. And these were Schlager hits. This was like a very schmaltzy kind of material, but the people loved it. And this guy always wanted to be a rock singer. He always wanted to be a Elvis Presley kind of guy, you know. But this was his biggest wish. I mean, but he couldn't do it. He always tried to do it, but he never ever had the kind of groove you need to sing this kind of rock and roll. He was always ahead the beat, and I know that because later in his career, I produced a couple of records with him, and it was awful because you had to. Whenever he said, "Now I want to do what I've always wanted," and I said, "You can't do it, you know. But why can't I do it? Yeah, because you don't know how to do it. I can," and we had a big fight once, but it didn't help. He had to stick with his successful things. Later, he got very depressive and he actually committed suicide then.
Which seemed to be kind of a common thread. There's others that have like darker elements in their music, like Alexandra or so, where you think like, oh, a lot of the stuff that's actually going on there is if you play that to a Mad Lib or just place wherever he may be, they would just go and sample it straight away because of all the polyrhythmic stuff that's going on or the weird harmony changes and so on. Like, is there any stuff that you would point out for folks who like to go for the crates? It's like, hey, there's overlooked Schlager stuff somewhere.
Well, you mentioned Alexandra. she died in a car crash at the beginning peak of her career, which was a tragedy. But she was crazy. She was absolutely nuts. I know the producer. I knew the producer back then very well, and he told me the stories. She would have been one who could have been like a German Piaf, because of her approach to what kind of music she wanted to do. She had a very clear view of what she wanted to do. In opposite to like the Schlager guys, you know, Roy Black or Peter Krause or not Peter Krause so much, but Roy Black and Rita Pavone, or the guys who we had back then, you know. They didn't have anything to say. They had a producer and they told them what to do down to the word. You know, you didn't have any voice. You were like a slave, you know.
So it was like Motown before Stevie was able to get free of it.
Yeah, it was this kind of situation in the German market. Alexandra was different. She said, "I'm not singing this. I can't sing it." And everybody said, "Why didn't you want to sing it?" I said, "Because I can't. Because it's bullshit. I'm not singing this kind of things." You know. So she was very strong about it, and she had a brilliant voice. And like I said, what a pity that she died in a car crash.
Why do you think that that system was so strict in Germany? While, let's say, in our neighboring country, like France, you have all these guys like Gilbert Bécaud, Serge Gainsbourg, Leo Ferré, or whatever, who were doing all these amazingly widely diverse things.
In one way, it was because this was, I recall it as a little mafia in Germany. It was not as to today's music. There were just 2 or 3 big producers, and they ruled everything. And they tried, of course, to keep everything in the family. It was even so that the lyrics were written from the wives or from their husbands, you know. So they didn't let anybody in, and they were so big, and they controlled the entire business. You know, there were a couple of guys to name was Gerald Mendelssohn. He was the guy who produced Peter Krause, Freddie Quinn, and Rita Pavone. And there was in Cologne there was Kurt Feltz and Werner Scharfenberger, and they did the rest actually. You know, and since they were successful with it, you know, they had like a big word, and so the artists really had a hard time to pass by, you know, because the record companies believed in those guys. They were like godlike producers, you know.
We're jumping a little bit ahead in time, but I want to close this section off by a Schlagerish thing you did a little later with what folks call the German Frank Sinatra. And if you were ever in a German pub at any given time, this will turn it into a carnival place straight away.
Right. I know what you. I think I know what you're playing.
If the internet would be working, I would be. Damn it. Let's do a reload here. That is not German. There you go.
Und nach dem Abendessen sagte er, lass mich noch eben Zigaretten holen gehen. Sie rief ihm nach, nimm dir die Schlüssel mit, ich werde fischen nach der kleinen See.
Hang on, maybe, because you were saying shallow lyrics beforehand, this is probably the ultimate escape song. It's a classic Frank Sinatra theme in a way.
Yeah.
It's like this guy who tells his wife that he just goes and buys some cigarettes. And then he happens to talk about the dreams that he never fulfilled.
Die Tür zu ging Stunde hinaus, ins neonhelle Treppenhaus. Es roch nach Bonawachs und Spießigkeit. Und auf der Treppe dachte er, wie wenn das jetzt ein Aufbruch wäre. Man müsste einfach gehen für alle Zeit, für alle Zeit. Ich war noch niemals in New York, ich war noch niemals auf Hawaii, ging nie durch San Francisco, in Paris and Jeans. Ich war noch niemals in New York, ich war noch niemals richtig frei, einmal Valentine.
So yeah, he's having these arguments with his wife, and then he's going like, well, in the chorus, I've never been to New York, I've never been to Hawaii, I've never been to San Francisco in torn jeans. I was never a free man. And
Right. This in Germany to this point is like a national anthem. They play it on the Oktoberfest. As soon as let me say that they only play the chorus really, because the verses in a beer tent are rather boring. You know, it's like very elegic. So they play the choruses, and the whole tent is standing on the chairs. You know, so this guy Udo Jürgens is his name. He just turned 80, by the way, a couple of weeks ago. He had a big show back in Germany. And he is probably German's really superstar. He has a career of more than 40 years, 50 years behind him, you know. And everything he does is really successful. And he is actually the crossover between Schlager and pop music, because his lyrics are everything but shallow. He had lyrics which are going into environmental problems, you know. He has this kind of things like in social problems, you know, when you have the problem like here with a normal life and you want to break out, you know. He has like world pollution problems or weaponry. He had songs where he stated you should just dump all the weapons right there where the ocean and where the sea is the deepest, and things like this. So he's a big star. He's our biggest star.
what did you have to do with that particular song?
I produced it.
So that meant in this situation?
In this situation, to produce was back then you were the technical and artistical producer. I actually remember in the original recording I played this little mouth organ on a JP8.
Oh, so you got points in it as well?
Not really. Yeah, you get points, but not composing points. You get what we call GVL points, you know, which is something else. But this record is still selling, and I still get residuals from that.
And it's playing on the radio once or twice.
Oh yeah. It's a big hit. He even made a musical with this song, which has the title Ich war noch niemals in New York. I've never been to New York, which is successful.
As you mentioned the Oktoberfest, Munich at that particular time when you started working in those studios started to become famous for what they called the sound of Munich as well. And we understand you somehow slid into that door somehow.
Well, that's a long story, actually. I worked for Deutsche Grammophongesellschaft. Like I said, first of all, there's a little guy who got gin tonics for band leaders. But then I got a contract as a tech, as an assistant tech. And a little later, my boss, who was a sound engineer, real sound engineer, had one big problem once. He liked alcohol a lot. And he was drunk and he was lost somewhere in Munich. And the next day, 9 o'clock in the morning, we had a big session with a big orchestra. And he didn't show up. So I was the only one who was there. And the producer at that time said, "Can you do the recording?" I said, "Well, I guess I could, but I'm not allowed to." And then he said, "I don't care. You have to do it." And of course, you start sweating because this is like your first chance to be on officially on a mixing console. At that time, especially with Deutsche Grammophongesellschaft, this was a very, very strict thing. The tech was operating the tapes, and the sound engineer was operating the recording console. You can't imagine these things today, but this was the way it was back then, you know. So to touch a fader on a console was, for a tech, was a sacrilege. You couldn't do it. So this producer said, and he was still, until he died, he was a close friend to mine. He said, "I gonna support you, and I take all the shit I wanna get. I will get from my boss. You know, don't worry, you do the recording." So I was sitting at the recording console and had like an 80-piece orchestra in front of me. Of course, I was sweating because I had to do everything. I had to put up the microphones. I had to run in and out to set up earphones and everything. But at the end, I succeeded, and I did a great recording. And from that day on, I was something like a sound engineer, you know. And then the studio was closing down shortly after that, and was taken over by an independent company. It was called Arco Studios then, and they employed me as a sound engineer then. So this was my first way into a studio, and of course, parallel to that, I was studying music, and so I was at the beginning of a merger between music and technique, which today is a very common thing. Back then, I was one of the first and only.
I understand you met a certain other person that became kind of synonymous with that Munich sound, who was actually not from Munich, but from South Tyrolia.
Oh yeah, Giorgio Moroder. I saw the lecture you did, and you called him Hans Jörg. It's actually his name. I know he doesn't like that too much to call him Hans Jörg, but who cares? Anyway, no. Giorgio was working in his famous Musicland studios, a couple of miles away from Arco Studios. And he heard about me being a crazy wizard. You know, I was then a little later in Arco Studio employed, and of course I had the chance to do my first arrangements for Schlager music or something. And I was doing the arrangements, you know, at that time you had to write the score, and you had a copyist who wrote the music to sheet music. And so sometimes I was sitting at the recording console, and out there we had like 20 strings, you know, like violins and cello or whatever. And I was conducting them from the recording console, you know, so this was something really crazy. You know, and he heard about that. That there is this kid. I'm 12 years younger than he is. You know, so he heard about me and said, in his unmistakable Tyrolean accent, "Falty, don't you want to work with me one of these days?" I said, "Yeah, I would be delighted." So I visited his studios, and he mentioned a project he just started, which I should do with him, and this was the movie Midnight Express. And this actually was my first work as a keyboardist and programmer of old vintage synthesizers like Moog and Oberheim and whatever we had that days. And it was my way into the big world of international music, because Giorgio at that time was already famous in the States. He had a very strong relationship with Neil Bogart of Casablanca Records. Donna Summer was already very successful, and since the movie Midnight Express was, as I recall, a co-production between Casablanca Records films and tapes and whatever, he was chosen to do the music, and it was a very exotic approach to do this movie with him. And he did
exotic in what way, apart from the accent?
Well, because this was not the time where movie scores, electronic movie scores were like the hippest thing on earth. It were like, I mean, we had Chariots of Fire and things, and other things Vangelis did, but to do like action movies like this, you would probably expect, especially one which is done in Turkey. You know, you would have probably expected to use an orchestra or use some very oriental kind of sounds, which later on we did on synthesizers. But it was a unique thing, and it was, of course, the genius of a guy like Alan Parker, who had the idea of putting a electronic guy into there, you know. So we started to work on that. I programmed synthesizers, and at that day you had to do it like manually. You were just playing it onto a tape like this. We'll show you later, and the sequencer technology was just at its beginning. We didn't have digital sequencers back then. We only had analog sequencers, which were like voltage-controlled step sequences with like 16 or a row of 16 different settings, and you had to tune every single note, and then you could run a sequence, and then it played it, you know. And when you put in another tone at your keyboard, it transposed that program sequence into another key, you know, and that's how we did this kind of music, you know. So very, very ancient Jurassic Park synthesizing stuff back then.
Let's take it back to Jurassic Park for a second.
Yeah, here it is.
How did you feel like when you heard that Hans-Jörg was getting an Oscar for that?
I thought I thought it was the greatest thing on earth. He got an Oscar, and somehow I felt I had like a little fingernail from it, maybe, or a little toe or something.
Did you get to go to the party?
No, I didn't go to the party. Back then, I was back in Germany actually.
Okay, so what was your working relationship like?
We had a great relationship. Giorgio is a genius. He's probably one of the gifted writers in pop music ever. He's one of the most innovative characters we have in this field. He was not the greatest player. He was a composer, and when he played you demos, he played like a chord on the left and a chord on the right, and he said, "Harold, you look, I have this new song," and he was showing it to you, and he said, "Okay, interesting." So I was more the trained player. So we had a perfect match. He was, of course, capable of doing recordings, and he was sitting on the recording console. And I recall him sitting there and everything is like, we always called it bent needles. I mean, he had like distortion all over the place, nothing really sounded anymore, but he was in the middle like a kind of Dr. Frankenstein, you know, and trying to make something happen. And as he was not a great player, he was not a great tech either. You know, he was doing it, and then he was distorting everything. Sometimes these distortion kind of things were creating a sound, but at the end, you have to take it down to a decent level to get a record done. You know, so I could help in that field as well, because I was technically trained as well then, you know, and I knew how to do recordings. So these two things combined, these two people combined, made this perfect match, and we did, for years, we did very successful recordings, and we always had a great relationship. Giorgio was just a very, very generous guy. I recall in Los Angeles, I never, when we went to a restaurant, I never could pay in the evening. He was always paying the bill. He was, and everything throughout the years. He was really generous and a great guy.
On that note of generosity, because that's a situation people will find themselves in, like. As your relationship evolves, how do your actual splits change? Like, obviously, when you come in, a lot of the time you're just happy to be in the room. While, let's say, 5 years down the line, you feel like, oh, I'm actually doing 50% of the work here, so I should be having that part of the credits as well.
Well, of course that happens. I mean, you develop, and of course I developed really fast. I had my first of all, I was flown in to Los Angeles in '79 to do the arrangement for Donna Summer's upcoming album. Then all of a sudden, we found out that Neil Bogart requested a double album, not a single album, and so we needed more songs. So I got the chance to go to a studio and to start composing songs, because we needed them, you know. And I was lucky enough to write a song which then later on became Donna Summer's biggest hit, and it was Hot Stuff. So this song, this all led to a development and to a story which made me more and more independent. I had my first success, and I got different offers from different people. And of course, with Giorgio, our relationship developed as well. And I recall that, like '82, he was on a fly of doing tons of different things. And I said, Giorgio, I need room to breathe. I have to do my own things as well. And I felt that I had to go. So I left him in '82 and started to do my own thing, which was the right decision. But of course, we never had a fight about it. But he said, you know, you have to understand, if you go, I need somebody else. And when I left, actually, my buddy Sylvester Levi took over, and he was the guy who did Scarface and later not Dirty Dancing, Flashdance with him. Yeah. So I mean, these are things you develop, and everybody goes different ways. But we're still friends.
On that note, probably to show the way that you were actually working together, here's a little bit of an example. Maybe you can elaborate on what we are seeing there. Oh, let's take that off. No. Hey. Yeah, dealing with weather in the world can be a tough one. So there you go.
So this is a setup which is or was one of the beginnings of digital sequences. This little thing is called a microcomposer MC4 by Roland, and the record we did was E equals MC squared, Giorgio's solo record, and in this instrument, this sequencer, I had to type in every note manually. So if you guys might be keen with Logic Pro, whatever workstation you use, you have like a event list where you see a note position, you see a note pitch, you see a duration, you see velocity. At the time we didn't have, and you see like at the end you see the duration. So this four values you had to type in for every note and for every track, of course. And then you could play it back via a CV and gate situation into this what you see the cables back there is a Roland 700 series. Actually, it is like 700 complete 700 series, because this record we played and we performed live like an orchestra would play, and and recorded live to digital 2 tracks. And this was done by Soundstream Incorporated. This was, at that time, was the only system which was where it was possible to record digitally. And it was like a 44.1 16-bit recording situation. And it was used back then mostly for recording classical music because they demanded that kind of quality. And the editing, you couldn't edit these things because we made mistakes. You know, we had to go back to verse 2 or whatever, like the really early days of recording. And you had to splice it together. You had to splice the performance together, which we had to do in a sound lab back in Utah at Soundstream Incorporated. They had their labs there. And the Winchester discs back then looked like gigantic wash machines. You cannot imagine what this was. And we had like a room with which you would see today in like a coin laundry. You know, you see all the washing machines. You know, and there was like a big air condition because they created a lot of heat. And that's where we had to go to do the editing. And now let's continue and play the video, and then I explain you the next dinosaur.
And in the meantime, if someone had the dinosaur technology of a MagSafe 2 adapter for a PowerBook, that would be greatly appreciated.
So this instrument here. So this here you can see a keyboard on the lower side of the screen, and you see something which has like pistons, which you see above it, and those pistons go back and forth, and they trigger the keys, and those things were called Vorsätze, and it was by Marantz Technology. And we had a couple of those things for an electric piano, for a grand piano, and for a clavinet by Hohner. And you had to program this music as well with the microcomposer. And then once you fired the microcomposer and you press play, you had the Vorsätzes converted into a actual signal, like a keyboard player would play the instruments. So this was really the very experimental and early days of electronic digital recording. Today, this is all, of course, peanuts. You can see it, right?
Who's the lovely lady that's singing there?
This is Giorgio Moroder over a vocoder. It's not a lady.
There's another song, or the title song of that album. Is there something you would like to share about that one? Because that is being kind of popular with a lot of collectors these days. And should we play it for a second?
Yeah, why not? this song actually is called Energy Equals MC Squared. This has a very unique ending. Did you ever hear the ending? It is another thing about Giorgio's genius. He said, this is all like a digital album, and I want to have everything different than it was done on albums before. So he said, why don't we put the album credits into a song? And we first said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, we put it into the song. I said, what, do you want to put a a sheet there or what? He said, no, we sing it. And I said, what do you mean sing it? Yeah, we just state who did what on the record. You want to play the end? It's really funny.
Don't you find it a bit of a shame that as popular as that track is with deep house DJs these days, that they rarely get to the end, because even they have a short attention span now.
Yeah. The very end we didn't get. It's. Did you hear it? It's. He says, "Thank you, Albert." Did you hear it? That's funny.
Oops. Oh, that was the other Giorgio song. See, they cut that off. You work together on something else that we should probably quickly play on, because that leads into the next stage, I believe. Yeah, some of you might have heard that before. Yeah. So that was from another movie, American Gigolo, I believe.
Yeah, this was American Gigolo. Yeah, we did this song with Blondie. Jerry Bruckheimer requested a song, and Giorgio wrote the song. And like it is always with movies, you need an artist. And where to get the artist from? You cannot just hitchhike an artist. You just need somebody. Problem is, most of the guys are in their own album work, or they are on tour, or they're just not available. So it's rather tough to get the artist you want to do a song for a movie, unless you pay them like a fortune. Then you get everybody. But so Blondie was some kind. They were in the middle of an album, but they figured that it's a good idea to do a song for a movie, especially for a movie, because she liked. I know she liked Richard Gere. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean,
no wonder.
Play that to my mom, and it's like, hey.
Yeah, so Blondie committed, and so we went to New York. First of all, we did what I call grid, because this song was used in the movie as well, locked to the picture. So we recorded a first session, and we took it back to New York, which was not very appreciated by the group, because they thought they can play everything by themselves. And Giorgio was always a guy who does not want to spend hours and hours in the studio. Everything had to be quick and just get it done. And you know how it is with rock and roll groups. They spend time and time, then they smoke pot, and then they take a break, and then they, it was like
take a break from the pot smoking.
Take a break to relax again and to get back in. So it was like this was not Giorgio's world. I realized it immediately. So in New York, we finally convinced them to use our track, because we could of course justify, because we needed that grid because it was for the movie. And we had to get it done. It's with movie songs. It's always a question of getting things done quick and not spending a year like groups on an album. So Blondie was recording her voice in New York, and Mr. Stein was recording his guitar, and I was engineering at that time. So I remember the guitar of Chris's, I think was his first, Christine. So whenever he played, it was just like noise, and when he stopped playing, he immediately cut the volume. I said, Chris, what are you doing here? I mean, this sounds like shit. I mean, this is. And he said, "Oh, it's okay when I play it. It's good." I said, "Wait, could you just leave the volume open for a while when you're not playing?" No, I can't. So finally, I got him to just keep the volume open, and you cannot believe what I heard. It was like a hiss and buzz and ground problems and everything on his guitar. And when he just hit the chord, then it was somehow okay. But of course, it was unacceptable to record. So we had to spend like a day on his amplifier setup and his guitars, and get the grounding right and everything to make a decent recording, So,
but you were just not hip to the way the New York sounded at the time.
Yeah, but this was a little too much. I mean, I'm keen to everything new, but if it's just technical problems, and it's just not, and this one didn't really sound. It was terrible, So we got them to do the performance, and then I had a talk to the keyboard. I said, "Yeah, I have another idea for this and that," and then we tried to record it. We couldn't get this stuff in sync, and then Giorgio said, "Okay, guys, this is it. We go back to Los Angeles." And then they said, "Well, but the record is not finished." "Yeah, we finished it back in Los Angeles." So we took the tapes back. And we finished it, and then we had rather serious arguments with the band, because I played the solo part on the song, which of course in some way I understand it. The keyboarder would have liked to play it, and he didn't really like it what I did. But anyway, the thing was out and it was a huge hit. It was one of Giorgio's biggest hits, so that's all history.
It was also one of the band's biggest hits.
And it was one of the band's biggest hits, yeah, right. That's right, yeah.
And I guess it's a karaoke classic, so I don't know, tonight there's an event about a karaoke bar, so...
Yes, I can play the solo.
Right, make sure we get a keyboard then. And you mentioned Jerry Bruckheimer. If I recall American Gigolo correctly, there was not a single... earth-devastating explosion in it. So you sure it was a Bruckheimer movie?
It was one of Jerry's early movies. I think it was probably... No, it was not his first, because I was asking that recently. It was one of his first movies, And he was, back then he was not like the big Jerry Bruckheimer you know him from today. He was a producer back at Paramount, So he did the whole oversee of the production, and that was, and thanks God it was a big success, and this was Jerry's beginning.
He also asked you to work on another movie that is probably only known to you if you were sadly old enough to remember VHS tapes and all the things that you would find in the B stock of your local videotheque. And that's some work you did for him then, right?
Right.
you recall what was going on the screen when that played?
Yeah, this by the way was my first movie. I did score. Jerry Bruckheimer called me one night back in Germany. I was somewhere in the Bavarian Alps, and he asked me, "You want to do a movie for me?" And I said, "Well, sure. What should I do?" I said, "Yeah, you should score the movie." "Oh, great." So I said the silly thing. I said, "Why didn't you ask Giorgio?" And he said, "Well, then I wouldn't have asked you." But he said, "Yep, Giorgio's not doing movie scores anymore. He doesn't want to do this. He's producing an own movie right now, and so he doesn't want to do it." And first of all, I thought, what a dumb question I was asking there. Maybe he said, "Oh, good idea," I called Giorgio. But then he had the idea that I should do a movie for him, and so I said, "Yes, I'm gonna do it." The next day I was flying to Los Angeles, and he played me the movie. And it's the story. It's called Thief of Hearts. It's the story of it's actually a neat story. It's the story of a thief who breaks in a big mansion in Beverly Hills, finds the diaries of the wife, where she states all her fantasies and all the needs and longings, and he reads everything, and he gets close to the wife later, and he knows everything about this girl, and he, of course, then seduces her, and he's really sneaking into her life. A great story, somehow a terrible movie. It didn't work at all, but it's a really good story. I think it would be a good idea to do a new one with this kind of scheme, because I think it's great.
And then you got on to do another movie, and damn it, what's with the YouTube DJing today? Check. So.
He co-wrote The Heat Is On, and is joining us to perform the movie's theme song with this week's #8 hit. Here's Faltermeyer with Axel F.
Rick Dees.
Yeah, I guess we got better sounding videos of that, but we also wanted to give you credit for the invention of wireless MIDI. And that worked really well in that setup, yeah?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so that song, I guess one or two people have heard of that, and you gladly, do you probably want to say anything before we go into this thing you prepared, like in a good cooking show beforehand?
Yeah. Well, Axel F was the theme song, obviously, from Beverly Hills Cop, and the interesting thing about that song is that, first of all, nobody wanted to have it. I got close to the fact of getting fired from the movie, because I tried several different themes. Nobody liked it, and it mostly has to do with the fact that at that time to score a comedy was always done with an orchestra. It was like this Hanna-Barbera aesthetic, like you had like the orchestras with the like cartoonish kind of things, like the dum 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 dum, and had everything played live, with an orchestra. So now there is the idea of doing an electronic score and doing that with one of the most successful comedians we had in America at that time, Eddie Murphy. So the studio was nervous, everybody was nervous. The only guy who was really not nervous was Marty Brest, the director, because he had a very clear view of what he wanted to have. He wanted to have like the aesthetic of groups like Yassou or African Bombada or this kind of things. That's what he wanted to have. and very minimalistic. No paddings, like my movie before was like a more or less a Tangerine Dream kind of approach to the scoring, you know. So this should have been totally different. No padding, nothing. Just minimalistic, patchworky kind of sounds. So the first two attempts of writing a theme failed. They didn't like it. So I said, well, I'll write another one. Don't worry. So I'm writing the third one, and of course, when you don't succeed and when you don't get what they want, everybody gets nervous. So I play them the first couple of bars of Axel F, and I still see it as it would have been yesterday. See Bruckheimer looking at Simpson looking at Bruckheimer, Marty Brest looking that. Then the editor Billy Weber said, "Nah, it doesn't work." So it was like a situation you were against the wall, you know. Somehow you couldn't. What should you do? You just had to.
And probably in order to understand the horror of that situation, you might want to talk who that Don Simpson guy actually was.
Well, of course, Don Simpson was Jerry Bruckheimer's co-producer. Don at that time was very, very into drugs and changed his mind on a minute basis. You know, it was like 1 minute you were a star, the next minute you were fired. So it was very, very hard to work with him. But he had good ideas. That's for sure.
I mean, he invented high concept basically.
For example, yeah.
Which is probably, from your view, like, how would you describe high concept movies?
Well, I mean, at that time, this was a innovation. This was something incredible, you know. And he was the father of that, you know. So, yeah, Don Simpson. So I'm there with my little melody, and we listen again and again. And I played them several different variations of the theme. I had it locked up to different cues, to different parts of the movie. And I played it, and Don said, "I don't know." Jerry said, "I don't know. What do you think?" So everybody tried to not make a decision. Everybody tried to get somebody else responsible.
It's very popular in these situations.
Oh yes, it's a really common thing. So at the end of the playback, I stopped the tapes and said, "So what do you think?" And in the corner, Billy Weber said, "I don't think it works." So Marty Brest, the director, was sitting there, and I still remember that with he always smoked cigarettes with a tip, you know. He had like this tip, you know, and had the cigarette from them. He was smoking like that, and he said, "Let me hear it again." And I played it again. And he listened very, 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 very into it, and then the thing was over, and there was silence, and I said, "Well, this is it now. Either I'm fired, or they like it. What else could happen?" And Marty Brest said, "I have to tell you guys, I think that this is the most perfect cue I ever heard for this movie, and I think it's great. I love it, and we should go for it." And then I won, you know. And then Simpson said, "Yeah, I think it's great. Let's do it." And then Bruckheimer said, "Yeah, great. Let's do it." And Billy Weber said, "I still don't think it works, but you guys do it." So I was in, and I did the movie.
Interestingly enough, it never got to #1 at the time, even though it was everywhere.
It was #1 in England, but it was not in America. I was stuck on #3, and I had #1. I had "Careless Whisper" and from Wham. Mm-hmm. And #2 was "Tears for Fears." Shout. I remember the Shout. Oh. And I was #3, but I was really there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I was always selling like 20,000, 30,000 less than they sold, you know. So
less.
So
you know, want to imagine what
today
the
you're
rest
happy
was.
when you sell 30,000, right?
Pretty happy. That will get
Very
you to
happy.
a straight #1 in Germany now.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which
What
is,
a pity.
Never got to #1 in Germany either at
No,
the time, right?
no.
But it got to #1 25 years later, bizarrely enough, yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that's something we're gonna get into in a second. Probably let's have a little look at this video. Where was this shot?
That's shot in my studio back in Germany, because I'm doing remakes of all my famous themes from the movies for a couple of reasons. One reason is that we have a situation with the movie studios. They are very, very protective about releasing scores. I'm getting tons of requests of having the scores of my movies, and Paramount, for example, does not release it. And so now I'm out of any re-recording restriction anyway. So I'm re-recording those things, and of course I'm trying to re-record it in a manner like we did it back then. And Axel F is the first one I just made a remake of. The next one to follow is a Top Gun Anthem, and Steve Stevens is the guitar player. He's going to play the solo again. And then, of course, Running Man, Fletcher, and all these kind of things we're going to re-record, and so that we are able to release them and release parts of it like we did the scores, you know. And then the next reason why I'm doing it is because we are planning a remix album next year, where we invite DJs to make remixes of that songs with the original stems. So I can provide the stems, and because I played it, I did it new, I own it, so I can distribute them, and we make this remix album. That's why I'm doing this.
Do you find it hard to sonically capture the same kind of energy than in the original recording?
Would you use modern instruments? Then it's of course a lot more difficult, because, like I said, at that time we didn't have dynamics in keyboard technology. So if you forget in today's technology to really get rid of everything dynamic, you know, then you would never make it sound as we had it back then. But plus, of course, if you use different instruments and if you use new instruments, they sound different. Even if you have like the best plugins for Moog synthesizers for Roland, this is a JP8. That's actually the original JP8 I played Axel F on in '84, and still have the original sounds. They're on a cassette, and you just load them in, and you have the exact right sound. If you don't use these kind of instruments, then you would have a hard time to get it. Yeah. With Axel F, there's a unique thing as well. Axel F was never a song. Axel F was always a patchwork. It was a cue with the main theme, this dun 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 dun. Then you had another cue with the dun 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 dun, and then you had the marimba cue, which we all called back then the banana cue, because it was the scene where Murphy puts the banana in the tailpipe of the two clumsy cops, and so we designated this marimba sound to the clumsy cops. So this was the banana sound, you know. So these three main parts were never linked together in one piece originally for the movie, and so we assembled that for the record. And interesting enough is that back then we had a music editor who did give us a click for each scene, which was optimized to the edits and to the cuts of the scene. So they were slightly different, but just slightly. So we're talking about half a beat per minute. You know, you had like a tempo which is 118.45, then you had a tempo which is 118.78 or 1119 or 1117 something, you know. So when I reconstructed Axel F, I did reconstruct it with this little minor tempo changes, you know. And so you would think that Axel F has one tempo, but it doesn't. It has tiny little differences in tempo. So that's the unique thing about it. Yeah. So that's in my studio here. So the MIDI sequence obviously is recorded already. I'm just trying to tweak the sounds. So that's a Moog Model 15. That's the original one which I used back in '85. Ist das so, man? The good old Lynn. This was the drum. It doesn't really work. This was the drum machine where the bass drum and the snare were recorded with. And that's a unique thing. That's how we made the reverse noise. If you want to stop the tape real quick, I explain why. So that's how we did the noise. You know, this at the Axel F. And the reason for that is why we just didn't take a fader and cut it. Is that you have on the mixing consoles, those were all VCAs. So it's not like a cut. When you cut something, it was like turning off electricity slowly, you know, but a couple of milliseconds. So it's not. So you would not get the effect like this here to really have a clean cut. It's always like a little fade out, you know. So we figured the easiest way to do this is just to plug in and just rip out the chord, you know, and then you had a real clean cut, and that's how we recorded that direct to tape, because at that time we didn't have like Logic or something or Pro Tools where you just take a sound file and just cut it, and it's real, then it's clean. So this is another dinosaurian, ancient Jurassic way of doing music.
Was laut, gell? Nee. Nee, der war blöd.
That's a Roland 100, M100 model. That's how I constructed the footsteps. Well, that's the finished thing then.
We did Mr. Marimbas, right?
What's that?
We did miss the marimbas.
We did miss the marimbas, right. But I mean, that's just the assemblage of that. The sound is, of course, just location sound, so you don't hear the real sound, but it sounds pretty cool.
I do understand, seeing that we have this thing here, which is a little too heavy for one hand. We don't have the time to bake this so that it will be in a proper working condition in time, but we do have the copies there, and if you don't mind, Eric's gonna put that on the desk later, and you can have a little go with the multi-track of that and do your own little dub mix of it. I guess.
Right. Go for it.
It's heavy.
It's amazing how this if you just imagine that what's on there today fits on a little stick.
On that note, how does it feel when you seems like you're inventing an entire genre of cover versions? Then there's this guy. You can learn how to play it as well. That's kind of funky.
That's the ballad version.
This guy is very remarkable. And so on. So countless hours of fun, I say. That's probably one way to learn about the right situation. Like, if this guy hits, 592,000 clicks now, are you getting any of that?
I don't think so.
Who's getting that?
I guess
outside of YouTube and Google.
Well, I think that's still a gray zone, and I think it's a pity that this is not solved. But it's our fault. I think we should have the industry should have cut in there a lot earlier. But nobody really saw the danger of things like this. And of course now it's too late. There are too many things, and now they're trying to catch up with it. And it's so tough to really get a handle on there, because you don't get really help from the governments either. You know, you even have parties like we have the Pirate Party in Germany, who says the music is for everybody. You shouldn't get any royalties. You know, so I think that's a pity, and I don't know how to get out of this misery. I know that there are attempts made, but it's still gonna be just a fraction of what we should get. I think, you know, that's speaking for you guys as well, because you try to make you maybe try to make a career in music. So where the royalties come from.
But before we get to this guy, I mean, there was Paramount before that probably did not have you participate in your actual own work too much.
Yeah, when you sign a contract for doing a score, especially with Paramount, there's this famous word by Henry Mancini, whom I met actually before he died, and we talked. And he was a nice guy, and obviously he's a guy who I really adore, and his whole work and everything. And he said, you know the big arc from Paramount down at Melrose, 55 Melrose, this huge arc where you go through the gateway, and then you are in the holy grounds of Paramount. And he said, this arc has a special meaning. When you drive or you walk through this arc, you lose your publishing. That's this arc for. And that's the way it is. When you do a score, you have to sign off your publishing, and what you do actually is you do work for hire. You, of course, you get money, but you sign off your video rights, and so you get just a fraction of that what you should get. But on the other hand, on the long run, of course, it pays off, especially with Axel F or with other things. It paid off because the soundtracks at that time were selling millions, you know. And of course, TV performances, and now with Netflix and all these kind of things, you of course get some money. It's a fraction of what you should probably really get, but at least it's money.
And the thing is, I guess you just did some more, and in the end, it all added up, and we don't need to worry about you.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Good. There's this great guy to introduce this thing. That's not the original version, though. Just so. It's obviously you were an inspiration to folks around the world. Yeah. So how was the work on that little recruiting theme for, I guess, the United States Marine Corps working out for you?
First of all, there was no briefing. It was the rare situation that I composed a theme before the movie was shot. So I had this theme, and I recall a dinner with Jerry Bruckheimer and Don Simpson and my friend Keith Forsey down at Morton Restaurant in Los Angeles, and we were having dinner, and Bruckheimer said, so he was just cutting his steak, and he said, so have you a theme for Top Gun? I said, oh yeah, I have an idea. I said, can we hear it? I said, no, it's not recorded yet. So and he was always very fast for several reasons. Said, no, you can't. I didn't record it. So why didn't you record it? I said, well, because I didn't have the time yet. So record it. Can we hear it tonight? I said, not really. I said, why? You said you have it, but at least I could hear it. I said, well, I would have to play it to you on a piano. Yeah, so let's get a piano and let's play it. This was how Don Simpson was. So we went to the studio, and I played them the theme. They liked it. And I said, we need a demo for it. We needed immediately. Actually, Tom Cruise at that time was with us in the studio. And they loved the idea of the theme. And so I had to make a demo for them. And I did do it in that very night. And it took me 4 hours or 5 hours to get like a first draft of demo together. So I came up with this tier 8 sounds at the beginning, you know, with this delay and everything, and that then turned out to be the intro, because they liked it, and we just tailored it, and we put more stuff on it, strings and everything. So we repeated it all over the place for the beginning, and actually it was Bob Battermy, the music editor, who had the idea to really loop that at the beginning and not put the real theme, the melody on top, just put like images on top and just build it forever and forever.
But when you said to him, "Oh, I have the theme for that," then did he tell you anything beforehand about the movie? What he wanted?
Yes. What he said is, we need a theme for this movie. It's about flying. That's how the briefing was, and you have to. And he said, Harold, you have to see these guys, these pilots. They are like rock and rollers in the sky. They are waiting for their takeoff clearance, and they're sitting in their F-14s, and they have like a Walkman on. But at that time we had the Walkman with a cassette, you know, and they have Walkman on. They listen to Billy Idol, and I said, interesting. So I'm writing something rock and roll. He said, yeah, but you know, it has to be heroic. It has to be everything. It has to be everything a theme needs. And funny enough, the first couple of bars I composed was for a total different movie. It was Fletch with Chevy Chase, and there was a
We'll
scene.
get to that in a second.
Yeah, there was a scene in Fletch where Chevy Chase dreams to be Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player, and he has like that dream sequence, and he dreams because he's this big star, and I had this da dee da 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 for that very section, and funny enough, we worked in a studio where next door was Billy Idol working on his new album, and Billy came, and we are good friends actually, and so Billy worked next door, and I was playing with my thing, and Billy took a break back there, and passed by my control room, and he opened the door, and he said, "Harold, that's great, that's like Top Gun, you should use it for Top Gun," and he left. And I said, "He should use it for Top Gun, I'm doing it for Fletch." And then I thought about it. I said, well, it would be a really good idea to have it for Top Gun. So I thought about it more and more, and the more I thought about it, the more I knew this is the theme for Top Gun. So I took it off the movie Fletch, because this was just a little scene. I could compose everything for that, which I later on did. Took away the theme, and this was Top Gun. And actually, let's say Billy Idol was somehow the initiator of that theme for Top Gun.
So let me get this straight. For 1 second, you were writing something for a comedian dreaming to score triple doubles. Next thing, you're taking that thing to annihilating Russians in the sky. Like that's mildly different content.
Yeah, you have to be flexible these days,
Right. I mean, it was an interesting political climate that the movie was came.
Poof. Of course, it was still the Cold War, and I mean, of course, today this movie wouldn't work. You would have to write it totally different,
You somehow have the feeling that the foreign department seems to be.
But it might come back if we continue like this. No, but at that time it was just a home run. It just hit the spot. It was this heroic thing. As a matter of fact, there's another song in this movie which is called Memories, which is the scene where the partner of Tom Cruise, Goose is his name in the movie, he dies.
You can ride my tail anytime.
Right, yeah. So this guy dies, and so there's this very sad melody. It's called Memories, and that's actually one of the favorite tunes they play in Arlington when they have a funeral of one of the army guys, So this movie definitely stirred up some things, and to me it was a big honor to do music to a real American domain movie, So normally you would use John Williams or one of the guys, but it was Bruckheimer's decision and Tom Cruise on Don Simpson's decision that I do the movie.
So it didn't feel in any sort of way weird to you, because I mean, obviously it's a mildly different situation with, like, as a German writing for something that doesn't get much more American than this movie.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, it was the decision of the producers, and I felt somehow in one way honored. In one way, of course, stumped. Why didn't they use a Native American for that? Yeah.
Using a Native American could be an interesting take on that as well.
Yeah.
The record is not fully clear on this one, so I'm asking you, by playing it, whether and to which degree you had an involvement on this part of the soundtrack.
Well, I recall that this was an adaptation of Giorgio's "Take My Breath Away." We needed that in an instrumental version, so I guess I did do a little cue out of it and played it with a synthesizer. For Giorgio. It was a lucky shot. I mean, I of course would have wished I would have written more songs for Top Gun, but the scoring was so intense and so time-consuming that I didn't really have the time to sit down and invent and compose songs. So Giorgio took the chance, yeah, and said, I have songs, and I write songs for the movie. And he was actually littering Bruckheimer and Simpson with ideas, while I was working on the score. And of course, great that he came up with "Take My Breath Away" and "Danger Zone," the two main songs of the movie. I wished I would have contributed to it, but I just couldn't. There was no time for it.
Because you were busy doing something else, and I'd like to play rather the actual music video rather than the way it was used in the film, because you were doing a bit of acting in there as well.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, that's one of the finest example of white man funk, right?
Oh yeah. But you know that the white man funk here comes from a very funny thing. I got so many like compliments of what great drum programming. This is I mean, drummers came. How did you do? How did you come to this idea? How did you do all the syncopations? And I have to admit, it was done by mistake, because at that time you have the picture of the Dr. Click, right? Yeah. Maybe you can show us that real quick. At that time, you had to fire the digital sequencers with a device which was called Dr. Click. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this kind of ancient device, maybe not. We show you a picture of it. This is a device where you had a quarter note click recorded on the multitrack, and then you feed the quarter note click into this machine, and the machine analyzes it and spits out a code like 48 beats, 48 beats per clicks per beat for like Lin machines, or you had like 96 beats clicks per beat for Oberheim. And you had like on the rear, you had like all these outputs, and so the click was running actually when you started the tape, and you pressed play in the gaps of two clicks, and then the machine picked up and was sync with the quarter note click. So with Fletch, I had the drums programmed rather straight, and I told the engineer to start the tape, and he started the tape, and I was somehow not paying attention, and I hit the Dr. Click start button 1 beat too late. So everything which was supposed to be on the downbeat of the first measure landed on beat number 2 of the first measure, and that's how this very, very unique a drum sound came. And I said, well, something is wrong. And my engineer said, but it sounds great. So I said, you're right, let's keep it. And that's how this very hip drum programming was done.
And moving on, because I see folks are getting ready for lunch, I guess we got to speed up a little. In A Marriage of Beautiful Accents in California, you worked on this thing. This was mildly more dystopian than some of the other things. Did you actually read the book before you started working on this?
No, I just saw the movie, it was done, and this was a very odd situation because the movie was finished, they had a composer, and they had the complete movie finished, mixed, delivered. And the production didn't like it. So they said, get rid of the music, get another composer. So they got me in as a composer, and I was left by myself completely throughout the whole production. I didn't see a producer, I didn't see anybody. I just got the tapes, I got the parts, and I took the whole stuff back to Germany, actually, to my new build studio, and we recorded that all by ourselves, and I delivered the score, and I never heard anything about it. I just delivered it, and I didn't even get a thanks or something. It was just done, signed, sealed, delivered. And then I was invited to the premiere. This was it.
And you reckon that was because you were not present there and were not hanging out at the right breakfast spots anymore because you were back in Germany? Or?
Yeah, I was at that time. This was just it was '86. The studio was just got built, and I said I have to do the movie. I do it, but I have to do it back in Germany because I have to observe the construction and all that. I cannot be in Los Angeles at that time. So I took it back, otherwise I would have done it in the States.
What were your main reasons for going back?
Actually, the kids. I have 3 kids. They're grown-ups. But at that time, I said I want to raise the kids back in Germany. I want to stay with the family. You know, I'm born and raised in Bavaria, outside Munich. And that's my home. That's where my heart is, you know. And that's why I did not want to raise the kids back in the States. I rather figured they should have the same youth and the same great times as I had back in there. And this was the main decision why I went back to Germany. And of course, as I said, then let me build a studio back there, and I can work out of Germany as well. And you can say it was a wrong career move, because if I would have stayed there, I would have probably done a lot more movies. But on the other hand, life-wise, it was a great decision. The kids grew up really great, and they're all doing fine. And I'm happy with the decision. And I still can go back, and that's what I'm doing. I'm going back and forth.
But you left the playing field to others like another German, Hans Zimmer. And
oh yeah, sure. Yeah. A lot of time people say if I would have stayed there, Hans Zimmer would have never happened, which is bullshit. Hans would always have happened because he's a great composer, and there's of course room for a lot more composers than just one out of Germany, you know. But I mean, it was my responsibility. I did make the decision. I know that a couple of people said you made the wrong decision, but on the long run, on the long hand, I'm happy with it, and I wouldn't do it different today.
I guess my dad always told me you can only eat with one spoon. And,
right. I guess I told you that, didn't I?
No, that he said that.
He said that. Yeah, I said that.
But it might be a generational thing, because
right,
I think
maybe,
you're almost to the day,
right,
like 2 years apart.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, you had a whiff of the Hollywood life, and I mean, outside of a football club, Munich is a little bit more laid back than that, especially where you
Oh
are,
yeah,
right?
sure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's to me, it's always heaven to be there. And when Hollywood got too crazy for me, I just went back took the next flight back to Germany, and then entered our premises and just felt great. And then I had enough power to go back.
Things you did back in Europe, we quickly want to hint on before we open up for questions. There was this one, which was so popular in Germany at the time that they made us do choreography dances in school to it. And since it was an old hippie teacher, you did not want to be there, trust me.
Here's Laura Branigan.
What was your contribution to this then?
I wrote the arrangement, and I did play lots of the synthesizers together with Robbie Buchanan, who is a great piano player and arranger. And this song actually was written by a Italian musician, Ruff, and we got the demo tape from him, and said this is a great song for Laura Branigan. And the producer was Jack White back then, he's a German producer, known for lots of Schlager music actually. And I got hired to do the arrangements and play some keyboards. And this was the only song ever I wrote a full score, like you would write for a classical orchestra, of synthesizers to record that. And we recorded strict to the music I wrote. There was absolutely no room for improvisation. It was all done and all written out, and all the parts were played as written. And that's, for my work, actually unique, because normally I'm more the guy of try and error. But this time I thought this song is so consequent and so strict, so it has to have a master plan. Otherwise, it's just another jam session. And this, to that day, it's the only song I have written a score for a synthesizer song.
What did you, maybe we take a quick listen to the demo song, I guess, by this young Italian. And what did you change to it? So that already seemed relatively elaborate. And
oh yeah, that's just a different approach to things. We did it a more stumpy way. You know, his version is more elegic in one way, and has elements. I call it tangerine dreamy elements. You know, we made it really, really tough and really, really. We went more the Kraftwerk kind of way. You know, plus. The stumps we had in where these chorus things are boom with the big booms, you know, we emphasized that a lot, you know. Of course, this is a thing with Jack White being a German Schlager producer. You know, he said it. He said, "Let's do it really, really." Really hard and stumpy, you know, and that's the difference from this version to our version.
Were you actually going out? Were you dancing in the clubs at all?
No, I hated clubs actually, because we had a experience back in New York with Giorgio actually. Giorgio and myself went to New York, and there was this huge club which was called Bonds, and it was like, at that time it was like a 4,000 or 5,000 people club, and we went in there. We were invited. We were there in the VIP area, and I said to Giorgio, something is wrong here. Something is smelly. And he said, no, I don't. What do you think? And I said, something is burning. Let's go. And we actually went out of the discotheque, and we saw out there like the whole block full of firemen, because they tried to keep away the people from panicking. So we got out there, and then they had to evacuate the entire Bonds, and it burned down at that time. And I said to Giorgio, you know what, that's a sign from above or somewhere, we should not go to a club. So we never went to a club. Well,
that's that. So you just decided to do stuff that folks could breakdance to out in the park instead.
Well, no. I mean, we made music for clubs, of course, but we never hang out in the clubs. Giorgio didn't like the clubs as well, actually, not just because of the fire, but because of the fact that it's really loud in there, and we were more the guys who went out for dinner, and we had nice conversations than rather in staying in the clubs, and had to shout to each other all the time. You know, it's like I always call it like a super dimensional Walkman. You know, you have one in a club. You can talk to somebody. It's always just screaming and shouting, and I don't like that too much.
So you were just being boring then?
Probably I was being boring, yeah, but I enjoy more the gourmet evenings rather than the sound evenings. I have sound all day long.
What about being boring? Maybe we play a little bit of that before we talk about it. So what was your role here then?
So this was one of the most interesting productions I ever had. Together with the two guys from Pet Shop Boys, they came to Munich in 1990 and asked me if I would co-produce an album with them. And I said, I would be very happy to, but why do you need another producer? You guys can do it by yourself, can't you? And they said, well, because we want to utilize your skills in vintage synthesizers. And this time we want to make an album which utilizes vintage synthesizers. So we made the deal, and we decided to start pretty soon with the production. And it was so interesting to work with these guys because they are two really great producers. And so the three of us in the studio, me doing all the work with the synthesizers. At the time we used Synclavier for the main workstation, and recorded everything on Sony Dash 3324 digital. And so all the days we spent there was like really trying to be on a very, very high level of creating music. Sometimes almost really obnoxious, because we went, Synclavier had like at that time about 400 or 500 different samples of tambourines. So and we know that for our kind of music, about 10 or 20 qualify for being used, you know. But Neil and Chris wanted to hear all the 400 tambourines before they started recording a song, and we recorded 13 songs or 14 songs, so we had to hear all the 400 tambourines until we really got one, which we then used. And we always used one of the 20, but they wanted to hear everything because they didn't want to make any mistakes, just being accurate to the really point, you know, and to do everything the best they could do. It was a great work.
How did they take to Baltham culture then?
They actually loved it, because we have, outside of the studio, we have a little hut where we go in the afternoons for a nice tap beer, you know. And they were really keen to go there to the hut. And then going too much to the hut, you know, we did not work really, really concentrated. So I said, we only can go to the hut when a minimum of 40 sectors is written to the disc of the Synclavier, which is actually not a lot, but it's some kind of stuff, you know. So Chris Lowy is the technical guy of the two guys, you know, and he knew exactly that writing 40 sectors to a disc is a lot of work when you do normal recording, like a bass line or something. But he knew exactly that once you use like a ribbon controller or a mod wheel or a pitch bend on a keyboard, it eats up lots of memory, you know, a lot more than. So whenever we were stuck on like 32 or 35 sectors on disc, Chris came and said, "Let me just do a track." And he came to the Synclavier, I pressed record and said, "Go ahead." And the only thing he did was just some rubbish, but he just pressed the ribbon and the mod wheel and everything, and then he said, "Save it." And they saved it, and it was 42 sectors, you know, and said, "Now we can go and have a beer in the hut." So they really liked the Baltham out of Munich culture in the studio, which is really pleasant, you know. So they loved it.
Okay, before we write our 42 sectors, any questions from you guys?
What's your opinion on Crazy Frog?
Crazy Frog, the guys came to me with a first idea. They said, we have this idea of this frog, which was an internet kind of thing, you know, like the annoying thing. That's what it was called.
It's called a meme.
So they said, we want to combine Axel F and the Crazy Frog. What do you think about it? I said, I don't know what you really want to do with it. So they said, we're going to show you, right? I said, yeah, you have to show it to me. And then they showed me, and I said, I don't know. It's somehow it's funny. Somehow I really don't know. Yeah, and then they said, do we have to ask the movie company? I said, yeah, normally you would have to ask the movie company. So I said, well, but you know, on the other hand, you can't. I mean, there's so many cover versions on the market. I would just go ahead and do it. So you can do it, because then my kids came and said, oh, what is this? They were young at that time. I said, what is this? I said, well, it's this, they want to do this. That's cool. Let them do it. And I never heard anything about it anymore. I said, yeah, they can do it. And then, like a year later, it was done. It was released, and all of a sudden, I'm getting a call from BBC and saying, can we do an interview with you? I said, why? So I said, because the Crazy Frog is going to go to #1 from 0 to 1, outselling Coldplay 4 times. And that's why I want to make an interview with you. So I said, well, first of all, it might be a mistake. I said, no, it's not a mistake. It's the truth. So it was a big hit, and what should I say? I mean, it made a lot of people happy. I'm probably not the happiest guy with it because I still think that the original one is the one, you know. But on the other hand, music is there for everybody, and if it made so many people happy, then it's okay.
Thank you.
And also there's a headline saying Chris Martin hates the Crazy Frog.
Oh yeah, he was not amused, right?
I didn't think that guy had hate in him. Like,
That's what Crazy
Hello?
Frog does to you.
Hello? There? Here? Here? Hi. Yeah, hello. Talking about music for movies, when you face the idea of making a movie, of course, I mean, there's a lot of techniques like follow a leitmotif and these kind of things, but what is your main general approach to what you want to say with the music? I mean, what you are looking for on it?
Film music has a function like every element in movies have a function. What you have to be aware of is that the first in line in a movie is the picture, certainly. Then the next thing is dialogue. And then there is the sound effects, which are even more important than the music. And then comes your music. So what you are doing with a score, you are enhancing the feeling and the situation of the scene you have to score. So I'm approaching it so not to disturb any dialogues, and of course get out of the way of the sound effects. In using instruments with frequency ranges which are not in sound effect range, which was actually very, very, very hard to do with Top Gun, because with all these jet noises, they have a function like a white noise, which just is the summary of every sound, right? So this was very, very hard to do. The solution for that was, of course, not using pads, but using percussive instruments. So you get through this wall of noises. So you always have to know what you are doing to enhance a scene. If it's a love scene, you're of course writing a love theme, and you're enhancing that situation. And you have to be aware not and never to win against the dialogue and the sound effects. That's the way I approach it. And sometimes, of course, the interesting thing in a lot of movie, like Beverly Hills Cop, of course, was the tipping is a very interesting aspect. You play a theme before you see a character, which they mean you tip it. You make people aware that this is going to happen. You know, so this is a dangerous field, but it's always at the end, of course, the choice of the director, how you go for it. But I'm trying, like I said, to enhance the thing, and I'm aware of the function of scoring.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. Some of your soundtracks sound like soundtracks made by John Carpenter and Alan Moore. Back in those days, is there any relationship between you, apart of the fact that you were using probably the same synths?
Just say again the name of
John Carpenter.
John Carpenter. All right.
Alan Owers.
Right. Well, you know, there's an array of sounds, or back then it was an array of sounds you could use. You know, and of course everybody, all the composers were somehow they were linked, and you looked what the other was doing. And I mean that comes to a fact of today, for example, where you have like temp music on a movie, which is so perfectly done that it's very hard to do your own music. So what happens actually? It's a situation where where you have on a movie you're about doing, you have the music of Danny Elfman or of James Horner or of Hans Zimmer on it, and you are supposed to do your own music. The director falls in love with it and makes you to do this kind of music. So very often, and I think that's what Hans said recently as well, is that we're all copying from each other because we're just copying somebody else's temp music, you know. So now it's of course different because you have a wider array of sounds, of possibilities than we had back then. But back then, of course, everybody was listening what the other guy was doing, you know, and there were like different aesthetics of synthesizer work, like Carpenter, or you had Kraftwerk, you had Tangerine Dreams, you know, you had Vangelis, which was one of the pioneers, you know. So, and I adore all of those, you know, because they all did great work, and I hope that they like my music as well. Thanks.
The tough thing there, I guess, is if you're working to spec, no matter whether it's an advertisement or a film, the people that actually give you something usually have such a good idea of what they want that no matter what you are doing can somehow satisfy that. How do you deal with that other than showing them GarageBand?
Right, that's the problem. You know, you have to know that as a music composer, you get hired to the project in a very late process. You're hired when they do the post production. You know, so you have to see that the director is working with this movie for years already, and of course he's watching his music editor and requesting new cues all the time for new scenes. And with today's technologies, a music editor has a library of about 5,000 movies on his fingertip. So he can give you the soundtrack of Star Wars or from Love Story in a split second. And they can try all these things out and they work with it, and then of course they fall in love. And you have a hard time doing something new. That's the misery, but that's the way it is.
Hi, just a quick question out of curiosity. Now that you said that you feel like linked to the other composers, before you kind of got in the film game, did you feel like you were taking influence from people like Jerry Goldsmith and cats like that from the 70s at all? Like, did you take anything from that music, like John Williams? Not take like steal, but, you know, influence.
Goldsmith and Williams, of course, were already inspired by Puccini, by Wagner, by Mahler, and all the old composers, right? And of course, I mean, my favorite inspiration in film music was Enrico Morricone. I think he was one of the most innovative guys in film music. And I know that Hans Zimmer he's a big fan of Ennio as well. So of course Williams and Goldsmith are both brilliant composers, and I adore what they do. But from the originality, from the spirit and the ideas, the really unique ideas, I think Ennio Morricone is a step further. Or another one is Henry Mancini. I mean, Pink Panther is a piece of art. For the first time, I think that jazz music was done in a cartoon movie, you know. So those are the really innovators, you know. Yeah, and Giorgio, of course, as well.
Breakfast at Tiffany's. And
right.
All that.
Yeah.
One more quick question.
Sure.
I'm sorry. When I had studied composition, I was wondering, being from Germany, if you guys had ever studied anything like from Schoenberg back in that timeline, like the idea of Grundgestalt, like little motifs that you variate and things like that. Was that anything that you had learned in your training at all? I'm just curious.
I touched that field, but very, very briefly, because I went on so fast to the pop music field, which today I somehow regret. Right now, for example, I'm writing a play, a musical, and there you need, of course, a lot of more ways to express yourself. And sometimes I really come to a point where I say, I somehow regret and really feel sorry about that I didn't really study this kind of things more thoroughly than I should. But it's of course something which is a very, very interesting field.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Faltermeyer. Thanks for being here. I
Thank
have
you.
2 questions, and the second one is... Okay, anyway, the first one. With your brief encounter with Stockhausen, do you feel that it had affected the way that you work, even subconsciously in some way?
Like I said, I met him briefly. I worked on one. I really forgot what this piece of music was. It was very Stockhausen-ish, of course, you know. And I remember they had like a huge array of equipment with ring modulators and things at that time, which at that time were extremely expensive. And he had everything. He got, when Deutsche Grammophon heard that Stockhausen is doing something new, he got everything he wanted. There was, never in my life I saw so many Moog synthesizers than with this recording. I just think that the modern music guys, you know, like Stockhausen and company, approach the synthesizers from a total different point than we do. It was they used it as a kind of spice somewhere, you know, and they didn't really use it in a beefy way like we always did, you know. So it's a total different approach, and an interesting approach though. And actually, I did do some experiments with a classical trained conductor, Gustav Kuhn, and we tried to do 12-tone music and things like this with the synthesizers, and try to go back to this kind of approach Stockhausen had. Our work, unfortunately, was never released. Maybe.
And also, I was always confusing when I was like younger, Axel F with Herbie Hancock's Rocket.
Right.
And has it ever, and I know that many people still confuse it, and were you actually like inspired by this song, or did you even listen to it when it was out?
It is a very good question. I have to say, yes, Rocket was some kind of inspiration. To the extent that Axel F has a ascending array of intervals, you know, and what Herbie did was this down 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 with odd semitones, and when you listen close to my work, there is always a fable for semitones. And Axel F actually has this aesthetic as well, and I just think it's beautiful not to torture, and I'm not writing this to torture an artist, because this is very, very tough to sing, you know. But I just love the way semitones work with different chords. You don't change the melody really in big intervals, you just change it in little intervals, but you change the chords thoroughly, you know. So I always love this kind of thing. So there's definitely, it's very, very good ears, I have to say. And this was
amazing.
I definitely thought about Rocket when I did Axel F. Yeah.
Well, in that sense, I'd say vielen Dank, Herr Faltermeyer, and let's give the man a hand.
Very welcome. Thank you so much, guys.